My name is Brooke Miller and I'm 28. I'm a senior accountant at a mid-size firm. The kind of place people outside finance don't know. My days are neat. Early coffee, spreadsheets, quiet lunches, small dinners, lights off by 10. No noise, no chaos, no damage. I built this life piece by piece with my own hands and time. My degree, my job, my credit score, even the kitchen table I sanded on a weekend and stained in the hallway with a fan running. No favors. No shortcuts. No hidden strings. But if you ask my family, they'd say I'm the cold one. Not because I ever yelled or slammed a door or walked out on a holiday. They would call me cold because I stopped cleaning up their messes. Because I stopped letting their emergencies swallow my life. That's it. That's the crime. I have an older sister, Riley, 2 years ahead of me, and somehow always 5 steps behind. Riley can make failure sound like a tragedy and make the cure someone else's job. Lost a job? The boss was toxic. Kicked out again? The roommates were jealous. Missed a bill? She tried so hard. And my parents, Marcia and Victor, never questioned it. They just moved the furniture of their lives around her. If they couldn't fix it themselves, they called me. You're stable, Brooke. You're lucky you can help. That line followed me from my early 20s like a shadow. Help with the car payment. Help with rent. Help with bail. Always help. And if I hesitated even a little, they acted like I was the one breaking the family. So I learned something early, something I hate to admit. My value to them wasn't in being loved. It was in being useful. But usefulness has limits. Mine was closer than they thought. Sunday dinner in our family had a rhythm. Same casserole. Same table. Same soft pressure dressed up as politeness. That night it felt rehearsed. Mom met me at the door with a smile that was a little too wide. You look thin, sweetheart. Are you eating enough? Dad nodded without looking up. Hey, kiddo. Riley was already at the table, scrolling without seeing, tapping at her screen like a teenager in the principal's office. I knew the signs. When Mom was sweet and Dad was quiet, it meant they were about to unwrap something I wouldn't like. We made it through salad. Mom praised the weather like she'd invented it. Dad kept refilling his glass. Riley picked at her food like it might bite her. Then Mom put down her fork and folded her hands like she was praying to a small god named approval. Brooke, she said, voice too soft. We've been talking. Riley's had a rough time lately, and well, she's going to be moving in with you for a little while. Just like that. Not a question. A decision. Said with a tone that assumed I would agree because of course I would. I watched the room stop. They were waiting for me to resist so they could call me selfish. I looked at Riley. She glanced up then away. Dad cleared his throat, ready to push. I smiled instead. Of course, I said. If it helps Riley get back on her feet, I don't see why not. Silence got sharp for a second. Mom blinked. Dad exhaled like he had dodged a falling brick. Riley leaned back, smug settling on her face like dust. None of them noticed how still I went, how quiet I stayed. They thought I had caved. They did not know that I hadn't lived in that apartment for weeks. And I had no plan to let Riley or anyone move into a place that no longer existed for me. I did not wake up one day and decide to lie to my family. Took years. Years of small hurts, guilt-wrapped asks, and quiet sacrifices that nobody remembered. Years of learning that in my family, survival came with strings, and being the strong one meant being the most convenient to use. When I was 21, Riley's car got repossessed. She called me sobbing, said she had a new job. Said this one was different. She just needed a tiny boost to start. My credit was clean. Co-signing felt small. 3 weeks later, she stopped showing up. Payments got missed. Guess whose credit got hit? Mine. At 23, Mom called crying because the mortgage was past due. Dad had been laid off. Riley had moved back in. I wired $2,000 the next morning. At Christmas, Mom gave me a mug that said, "World's Best Daughter." I almost laughed into it. At 25, Riley got a DUI. The first one we knew about. Dad asked me to keep it quiet. Said it would ruin our family name. I paid for the lawyer. Riley never said thank you. A year later, she was pulled over again. I said no. Mom called me cold. You have never understood what it means to worry about someone you love, she said. Riley's life is harder than yours. That was the moment I knew. Not guessed. Knew. They didn't see me. They saw a function. A faucet. A wallet that smiled. So I began to pull back. Polite, careful. I said, I'll think about it. Instead of yes. I changed the subject. I let their emergencies be theirs. They noticed. They did not like it. One night I sat in the condo I had bought by myself, furnished with thrift and patience. I stared at my front door and realized I did not feel safe inside it anymore. Not because someone would hurt me, but because it wasn't mine. When they wanted something, it was ours. Just like my money, my time, my sleep. I made a decision. I called a realtor. I sold the condo quietly. I moved into a small rental across town. No one asked where. I did not offer it. Not to be cruel. Not to get revenge. To breathe. On Monday, the texts began. We'll bring Riley's mattress Saturday morning. Your dad is loading boxes Friday night. She's excited to have her own space. I did not reply. They were speaking to a version of me that was already gone. Each message assumed I would open the door and rearrange my life. Again, I let the plan march forward. By Thursday, Mom texted every day. Let me know if you need anything cleaned before she moves in. Riley says she won't be a burden. She's bringing her own dishes. That last one made me smile into my coffee. She hadn't washed a dish in years. Saturday came. I left early. Coffee first, then a slow drive across town to nowhere in particular. I walked through a farmer's market I did not plan to buy from. I stood in the sun and watched people pick tomatoes and smell candles. My phone buzzed 3 times before I looked. Missed calls. Voicemail. The 4th time I answered. Brooke. It was Mom, but not her soft voice. It was the brittle one. The panic one. What is going on? She said. There's a man here. He says he lives in your condo. He says you don't live here anymore. I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel it. The empty space. The missing certainty. You didn't tell us, she snapped. You never said a word. No, I said calm. I didn't. There was scrambling in the background. Bags rustling. Dad's voice sharp. Riley saying something I couldn't hear. Brooke, Mom hissed. What is this? I sold the condo, I said. Weeks ago. You what? I moved out quietly. No one asked where, so I didn't say. Silence again. I pictured them standing on the porch like they had brought an army to the wrong castle. Then Dad's voice cut through. You lied to us. You said she could move in. I said, if it helps Riley, I don't see why not, I answered. I didn't say where. Another small pause. A breath caught on the other end. So what? Mom said at last, her voice smaller than before. We're just supposed to figure it out now? For 1 second, I almost answered. But I didn't. Because here is what they did not know. I didn't sell the condo out of anger. I sold it because I was tired of living in a space that never felt like mine. I did it because I deserved to walk into my own home and not brace for impact. I did it because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people who refuse to change is to stop making extra room. They thought that phone call was the end. They were wrong. By sunset, they were at my new door. I knew they would come. Even while I was sipping coffee that morning, even while the voicemails stacked up, I knew Mom would not let it go. She would call someone, ask a cousin, pull an old address record, drive street by street until she found me. She needed to prove that no matter where I moved, I was still reachable. Still obligated. The knock came just as the light went orange. 3 quick hits. Polite on the surface, tight underneath. I looked through the peephole. Marcia, Victor, and Riley with a trunk full of boxes like this was a planned victory. I opened the door halfway. You found me, I said. Mom's lipstick had faded. Her hair was pushed back like she had been pulling at it. We tried calling, she said, voice tight. We didn't think you would actually. We didn't think you'd be here. It's my apartment, I said. Dad's voice rose hot and fast. You said she could move in. We're standing here with all her things, and you're acting like we're strangers. I did not move. I did not raise my voice. I never said she could move in here. I said, if it helps Riley, I don't see why not. That was about the old place, which, as I said, I don't live in anymore. Riley stepped forward, arms crossed. Her cheeks burned, not with shame but with anger. This is petty, Brooke. You always think you're better than us, and this is cruel. I tilted my head. You packed your life and drove across town to move into an apartment you didn't confirm still existed. That's not cruelty. That's entitlement. You're my sister, she said, like the words themselves were a key. Yes, I said steady. And for years you treated that word like an open wallet. Dad came between us. His voice held that old warning edge. Enough, Brooke. We're not leaving. We've put up with a lot from you. You owe this to your sister. There it was. Oh, the word that hung over us for years, never spoken, always used. As if every dollar I paid, every hour I worked, every night I stayed awake fixing a mess I did not make, had been put on a ledger I was required to keep paying. I stepped back and picked up my phone. What are you doing? Mom asked. Her eyes narrowed like she already knew the answer. I didn't reply. I dialed. 3 rings. 911. What's your emergency? My voice stayed calm. Hi. I have family members outside my apartment refusing to leave. They're not on the lease. They were not invited. I'd like to report trespassing. Riley's mouth opened like she had swallowed ice. Dad swore. Mom looked like I had slapped her. You're calling the police on your own family? Mom whispered. I asked you to leave, I said. You refused. The dispatcher asked for my address. I gave it. I stood in the doorway with the cool air on my arms. It felt like standing on a cliff edge, not because I might fall, but because the view was finally clear. This will ruin everything, Riley said. Her voice shook from anger and fear. Do you know what people will say about you? Yes, I said. They'll say I finally stopped opening my door. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up, quiet and calm. A woman officer stepped out, tall, steady. Her hand rested near her belt, relaxed. Evening, she said, looking at all of us. We got a call about trespassing. That was me, I said. She looked at my parents, then at Riley, then at the car which still had bags in the trunk. Ma'am, sir, I'm going to need you to leave the premises. This resident has asked you to go. This is our daughter, Dad said. This is a family matter. And this is her residence, the officer replied, simple and clear, which you are not allowed to occupy without permission. Riley looked like she might cry, or throw something, or both. You're going to regret this, Brooke. No, I said. I've regretted almost everything up until now. I held the door steady. This is the first thing I'm sure about. The officer stood there, patient and firm. There was no scene, no yelling, just the weight of a choice that had been waiting for years. Mom looked at me, and for a second I saw the softness she used to show me when I was small. Flickered, then it was gone. She turned away. They left. The officer nodded once to me and walked back to her car. The streetlights came on, one by one, like a quiet applause I had not asked for and did not need. Inside, the apartment felt still. Not empty. Clear. I closed the door. I could hear my own breath for the first time in a very long time. I put the phone on the counter and stared at the screen. 12 missed calls. More coming. I made tea. Chamomile. I stood with both hands around the mug and watched the steam rise, like the air itself finally had space. I do not want to pretend I was brave in a movie way. I was shaking a little. The kind that starts in your hands and moves up your arms. It was not fear of them. It was the body remembering how to be done. Later, as the night went dark and the building quieted, I stepped onto the small balcony. It was cold but not sharp. A neighbor waved from 2 floors down. I waved back. It was a simple thing. A real thing. More real than years of doing what I was told because someone needed me to be useful. I went back inside and turned off lights in rooms that were finally mine. No framed family photos on the walls. No trophies for best helper. Just clean space. A table I built. A bed I paid for. A door I chose to close. Somewhere across town, I knew they were rewriting the story. Casting me as the villain, the cold one, the ungrateful daughter. Let them write it. I did not move here to be loved. I moved here to stop pretending. I did not vanish. They just told the story like I had. And the next morning they made it louder. I woke up to 12 missed calls. 5 from Mom. 2 from Dad. The rest from numbers I didn't recognize. Cousins. Old neighbors. Family friends who hadn't spoken to me since high school graduation. Then the text came in a stream. How could you do this to your own sister? Your mom is devastated. Riley is sleeping in her car. Is that what you wanted? I scrolled. I did not reply. Then I saw it. A public Facebook post from Marcia. 3 long paragraphs broken by sad emojis, and a photo of Riley at 3 years old smiling at a cake. We raised both our daughters to care for each other, it said. But one of them has forgotten what that means. We're heartbroken that Brooke, so successful, so fortunate, would turn her back in our time of need. Riley did not deserve this. None of us did. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments. People I hadn't seen since I was 12 calling me selfish, cold, entitled. Same words as always, just louder now that it was public. I stared at the screen for a long time. I felt the sting. I won't pretend I didn't. But pain doesn't always mean you're wrong. Sometimes it just means you finally touched the real thing. I opened a new post. No hashtags. No fancy words. No heat. I attached screenshots. The $2,000 transfer for the mortgage. My name on Riley's car loan. The collection notice that came later. A photo of the lawyer invoice from her first DUI. A short timeline of every one-time favor since I was 21. The sale receipt from the condo. And I added one message I had saved from 2 years ago, where Riley called me a boring robot, because I wouldn't let her crash on my couch for a month. I ended with one line. I didn't abandon my family. I just stopped volunteering for emotional debt. Then I turned off my phone. Not because I was scared of the noise, but because I had no need for applause or argument. I needed quiet. I needed the sound of a fridge humming, and pipes clicking in the walls, and my own breath moving in and out. I made tea again, held the cup with both hands, stood at the window and watched a dog pull a man down the sidewalk like the world was brand new. I thought about every time I said yes when I wanted to scream no. I thought about every time I agreed to just this once. And it turned into a new rule I never chose. The phone lit up from across the room. Mom. Then Riley. I did not open the messages. I knew the rhythm by heart. Shock. Anger. Guilt. Pleading. Then back to anger again. Always the same. I blocked both numbers. Not from hate. Not from pride. Because not every door needs to be knocked on forever. Hours passed in warm silence. The kind that used to scare me because silence meant I might hear my own thoughts. Now it felt like space. Like oxygen. In the afternoon I took a slow walk. I noticed things I used to pass. A cracked brick that looked like a heart. A small plant pushing through a seam in the sidewalk. A kid lying on the grass reading a library book with his shoes off. None of it was special and all of it was precious. Ordinary life. The kind I had put aside to manage everybody else's extraordinary messes. That evening in my clear apartment, I opened the closet and pulled down a small box. Inside were things I kept because I thought they meant something about who I had to be. Old award pins. A birthday card that said, "Thank you for always being there." A sticky note in Mom's handwriting, telling me I was so reliable. I put the box back. I did not throw it away. I did not need to. It had no power anymore. The next day, a message came from an aunt I like. Not a lecture. A question. "Are you okay?" I wrote back. "Yes." She replied. "I'm proud of you." I closed my eyes and let that sit where the old guilt used to live. A week later, there were fewer messages. A month later, fewer still. People moved on. They found new storms to stand in. And I kept doing small, steady things. I set up my bookshelf. I learned the neighbor's dog's name. I cooked on a Tuesday and ate leftovers on a Thursday, and nobody asked me for gas money at 11 p.m. I slept. Real sleep, the kind that does not break at 3 a.m. with a buzzing phone. I won't pretend everything turns soft and sweet. Family is complicated. Love is messy. Boundaries are not walls, but they are not invitations either. They are lines that say, "I will love you and I will not lose myself to do it." That is not cold. That is not cruel. That is healthy, and it is hard, and it is worth it. Sometimes late at night I think about Riley. I wish her well, truly. I hope she learns to stand on her own feet, not just on my front step. I hope Mom and Dad learn to care without controlling. I hope they all learn the difference between help and rescue, between love and leverage. And me? I'm not the villain of their story, and I don't need to be the hero of mine. I just need to be the person who knows where her keys are, who pays her own rent, who keeps a kettle for quiet nights and a door that only opens when she means it. I didn't disappear. I didn't turn to ice. I just stopped letting someone else write the script for my life. I took the pen back. I wrote one word on the line they left for me, the one labeled, "Oh." I wrote, "No." Then I made tea. I stepped onto the balcony. The air touched my face. Somewhere far off, a siren passed and faded. Inside, the lights glowed warm and small. I closed the door behind me, and this time it was mine. Fully, finally mine. And if you need to hear it, here it is in plain words, slow and steady, with all the commas and pauses it deserves, so it can land and stay and help you breathe too. You are not cruel for saying no, you are not cold for choosing peace. You are allowed to close the door, you are allowed to be done.